Tonight is an experience I don't think I'll ever forget. Ela threw a little shindig as we floated out in the middle of nowhere. They had some vices stored away on the ship, assuming to have been lifted from someone back in Cuba. So, after ensuring everything was all right, we all spread out into little groups of 3. And among each, we'd split one cigarette, and Emidio would break into it, sprinkling some of that, let's say the leafy stuff over top, and then re-rolling. Ela took first light, then passed it my way. I enjoyed every second of the taste. I've gone far too long since indulging in my favorite vice. After I had a couple puffs, I'd pass it along to Emidio, and thus the circle continued. Though I noticed Ela would never take more than a single puff before passing it back my way. I tried to convince her to have more, but she'd shake her head, insisting I could have her extra puff. Who was I to argue? Where for Emidio and I. We did our best to gracefully sit on the floor of the boat, but I quickly lost my balance, breaking my fall with my hands. Readjusting, I laid my head against Ela's as we laughed about the ridiculous circumstances that put us on the same path into each other's lives. She asked me more questions about my second husband. I don't blame her for being curious. It is something that connects us. I told her about his kindness. She laughed, saying men like that couldn't be. But I corrected her. I told her how, even though I was blinded by my first love and the pain of it all, he still wanted me. I opened up about how I felt inadequate. And I was. I was previously used, previously owned, and a beaten down dog. His first experience at love, and he spent his heart on someone who was so easy to cast aside, easy to forget as a casualty of love. Ruben, his family, they were never deterred by my brothers and my past. She was surprised when I mentioned how many there were. 4 brothers, each gone in their own way, 2 by body and 2 by mind. Alex, the oldest, never to be seen or heard from after departing Saint's Me suddenly. I joked about always wondering if I had scared him off after forcing him to join us on one of my famous carriage rides. Wayne, well, Ela seems to know Wayne well enough. She laughed at the mention. It irked me a little. She wouldn't tell me why she despised him so much. So I decided to tell her more about the Wayne that I knew. She can curse his name all she wants, but in the end, he saved me more times than I can count. Not just from others, but from myself. I told her about the 2 weeks Ruben was gone, how they happened to be the 2 weeks my first husband returned out of the blue. Wayne spoke with me for hours about it. He didn't accept my spiraling, arguing back with logic. He ended up being the one to be there when I was told that Vincenzo was executed by a man who hunted myself. He and Uncle Johnny stayed in the saloon, Johnny being my drinking partner and Wayne making sure we didn't get ourselves killed. How all these are the reasons it felt safe to run to him when I was sure to talk myself down into oblivion over my grief of losing his brother. Because he wouldn't let me. Mila smiled slightly, grabbing my hand and placing it over her stomach. Her shirt was always too loose to notice a small bump underneath. She stared into my confused expression, stating that she hopes her baby only inherits those from him, nothing more. She went to take another puff of the cigarette, but I stole it, throwing it overboard. She giggled as I told her, I don't care what everyone else says, only a fully realized state while she's like this. Putting her hands up, she requested I continue. On to Arthur. Arguably the most frustratingly stubborn, crass, kind, funny, giant teddy bear of a drunk you could ever have the pleasure of knowing. Small doses does not exist when he's around. Even if you had only spent a few minutes speaking to him, it felt like you had contact drunk in a good way. The kind that left you only on the tipsy side and to believe that he took up the burden of running the family with no complaints. I struggled immensely to figure out how to talk to him in the day-to-day. But he, at the same time, was easy to go to when needed. We had many differences, but we shared one thing in common. We'd both have done anything for Ruben. We'd have so willingly given up our own lives for his. Ruben had lived. He had seen things. But he always had a certain innocence about him. He always kept a charm, unbothered by trivial things. And I think both Arthur and I, like an unspoken rule, agreed to protect that at all costs. I bit a chunk of my cheek away. The taste of blood began to mix into my saliva. I stared up into the sky, hoping that closing my eyes would stop the tears from flowing. Ela lifted her hand, wiping the unceasing drops away. Go on, she said. Never stop saying his name. He will come. Amidio moved closer and wrapped an arm around me. That had been the most interaction I think I have ever had with him since being stuck on this boat. So catching my breath slightly, I shook my head that I can't. If I were to continue, it would never end. I will speak until I suffocate, or all the words left unspoken eat me alive. So I just grabbed her hand and squeezed, my voice cracking on almost every word. He was the best of them. He was the best of the two of us. Now he's gone. She gave me a warm smile, wiping my face again and offering me a drink.